Thank you for being here. Just a little bit of a background before we turn it over to Sir Russell. I'm sure everybody knows Peter Gerharder as chairman of the ACBDA. In essence, our commitment was and continues to be, as instructed by Sir Russell and the ACEA, is to effectively make members of the America's Cup group available to the media, available to the community of Bermuda. And Sir Russell is here on another one of his whistle-stop tours, having travelled probably 30,000 miles in the last 48 hours to get here. And he is very determined that he be available to Bermuda as we start to work out what does the America's Cup mean for Bermuda. There's been a lot of attention from the announcement on December 2nd. We in the ACBDA have been getting up and getting organized, but the communication efforts will start very shortly, or in fact starts today, with Sir Russell, and his instruction to me is that as other members of the America's Cup teams and the ACEA come to Bermuda, we will be also opening them up to the media, to you all, so that you can chat and we can start to grow an understanding of what the America's Cup is and what it is for Bermuda. I don't think I need to introduce Sir Russell. I mean, he's won more America's Cups than anybody else, probably one of the world's most famous sailors. I also should tell you that the reason the America's Cup in Bermuda is in no part, small part, due to the encouragement that the Bermuda bid team received from Sir Russell throughout the process. So we in Bermuda have a lot to thank this man for. With that, Sir Russell.
Well, thanks, Mike, and thanks for coming here today. It's exciting to be back on the island, and things are already starting to happen now in terms of the preparations for the America's Cup. Of course, you'd be well aware that some of the teams have already started to the processes to relocate, to find accommodations and to sort out the operational side of things in terms of establishing their bases here. Oracle Team USA will be sailing their first boat here at the end of April or beginning of May. So a lot of those people have already started the process of finding accommodations and so forth here and relocating to the island. And then I understand that Artemis Racing will be following soon afterwards in terms of relocating here. So pretty soon we'll see some of the new foiling catamarans sailing on the Great Sound and starting to practice here in preparations for the finals races. We've of course also got the America's Cup World Series event here in October, and there's been preparations already underway for that, of course. As the event organisation also, the people are in the process of relocating here. I lead that organisation, and we hope to have that operational by early March, and have the bulk of that staff relocated here at least by the end of March. So exciting times ahead. A lot of people, as is typical when the America's Cup moves to a new place, are discovering what's involved throughout this process. So there's probably certain people probably understand that some of those things quite well. Others are learning as they see things happening and see developments. But I think everyone it'll be pretty obvious once these organisations are relocated. As I said, in the near future, it'll start to become pretty obvious to all. I think what can then be expected in 2017. So that's an exciting part. So with that, I don't know whether you've got questions or specific questions. I'm happy to answer.
Who would like to begin?
You talked about people seeing sort of the changes already and sort of planning applications for it. How do you feel the infrastructure side of things is going, and where will it go from here?
Well, I took a trip down to the Docklands a few days ago, actually, I have been to the island many times, but I've never actually driven around there before, so that was educational for me. And there's already work started on that. In fact, it was more progress than what I expected, which is a good thing. You know, I think you know, I certainly have no doubt that the island will get the facilities ready on time, and in many ways over-deliver in terms of being able to have those facilities available to the teams and so forth at an early stage. So I was impressed with the work that has already been done. Of course, it's only the start of the process. There's a tremendous amount that will be done, and you know, in many ways, that's the exciting part.
Just to be clear on specifics on that, as you are aware, Team Oracle have a planning application in. That is for the eastern end of the South Basin, which will be the permanent base of Oracle USA. We are also anticipating that another team, and I don't know if you want to say which team it is, will have at least...
Said it.
You said it, have you? that Artemis will be here. They will begin with their 45, AC-45 setup, while we get work to prepare for a permanent base for Artemis as well. So it looks like by end of May, probably, we'll have 2 full teams operating out of Bermuda.
Yeah. In fact, some of you will see both Artemis's new AC-45 and Oracle Team USA's AC-45. They're actually shaking those boats down in San Francisco this month, and before shipping here. So the plan is to, for those teams, is to put those boats in the water, iron out any obvious problems with them. And there are always teething problems when you put a boat that complex in the water for the first time. So they'll be going through that process. It's a short program, about 3 weeks of sailing, and then they ship all of the infrastructure here. And there's a considerable amount of infrastructure coming here, and that'll be here and starting to be constructed and established, such that the team can be fully operational by the end of April.
You just made 2 pretty major announcements too, in terms of broadcast and the broadcaster and the major sponsor.
Yeah, I thought it was something that I'd. I have a habit of doing that, unfortunately. That's right. We announced our partnership with NBC yesterday, which was an exciting announcement. NBC, of course, is one of the major broadcast contracts that we've put in place, and in many ways that needed to be the first one. Well, I sort of refer to it as the foundation broadcast agreement, because a lot of the other ones flow from that. It's a very, very important market for us, the United States, and that agreement is focused around the United States. So, and NBC are really motivated. They of course covered the races last time, but it was a process that was very competitive. There was at least one other major broadcaster that was trying pretty hard to secure the rights. So NBC this time have made some strong commitments in terms of promoting the event and the events leading up to it. They are committed to covering all America's Cup World Series races on NBC Sports, and then the final races on the network, with some considerable promotion around those races. So it's good news for America's Cup. I think it's equally good news for Bermuda, because one of the objectives with bringing the event here was to give the island some additional exposure, and that contract, of course, goes a long way towards delivering on that.
I wonder if you could say what that means for the European market. Does NBC link with the European market, or is there another network?
No. So currently the UK rights are out to bid now, for example. There'll be a decision on that within the next weeks. So there's obviously a big competitive process going on for the Premier League rights right now. within the UK, and we'll make a decision, as I said, in the next few weeks in terms of the America's Cup rights and who our broadcast partner will be within the UK. So that's another, what I would call, one of the almost foundation broadcast agreements that we will need to have. And obviously, with a strong UK team involved this time, that's an important contract for us in those terms as well.
And just one further question. Your colleague Peter Rush, during his summit address, mentioned
Yes.
that Bermuda, the Great Sound, offers some stunning conditions for racing. I'm just wondering, as a sailor, what do you think the conditions make Bermuda good for this race?
Well, what do you think?
I'm not much of a sailor.
Yeah, but you can imagine. No, it'll be fantastic. I was blown away yesterday and the day before. Yesterday I drove up to St George, actually, or rode up to St George, and blown away by the colour of the water here. It's amazing. The last few days have been excellent sailing conditions, by the way. So that's an aside. But I think Great Sound will be fantastic, not only from a racing perspective, but from a television perspective. You're going to have the relativity of the different colours in the water, and also the islands and landforms that are around, which will provide a relativity for these boats, because you can imagine when a boat's speeding along at the speeds that these boats do, if it's in open ocean, you don't really get that perspective of the speed necessarily. But if it's racing past landforms and so forth, then you can kind of picture it, and people will get a sense of relativity. So that's good. Also for if you think about the guests and so forth that'll be coming to the island for the event, it's a smooth water venue, which of course, if you're entertaining guests, that's an important factor, quite frankly. That you don't want to put them in an uncomfortable situation, but also the climate. It frankly is a challenge in some of the other venues to get guests out on the water, and it could be not unfriendly, but might be uncomfortable conditions. I don't imagine that's going to be an issue here. So they're all positives. So yeah.
You mentioned that the Great Sound, because of its close proximity, will present good challenges for the sailors. Can you speak to me from a sailing point of view?
Yeah, it's a small race course, so it's tight. As a racer, or as a former racer, that presents challenges because the wind's changing all the time, and it is changing all the time. The wind is never 100% stable. It's always changing. It's a three-dimensional problem. You've got that consideration, but you've also got boundaries on the course. For example, if the wind changes direction on an open course, you can spend more time waiting for the wind to perhaps change back. Whereas on a very, very tight course, if the wind changes direction, you're often forced to go onto the wrong tack at the wrong time. So you better be looking at how that wind's changing and planning your course. And don't forget, in these boats, it's not as if, like the boats that I used to sail, let's be honest, you had a little bit of time to consider all the variables. In these boats, when they're moving along at 40 knots plus, you haven't actually got a lot of time to evaluate the situation. So that provides challenges, and I think it's why you're seeing younger athletes on these boats, frankly. Which is good. We want a race course that's complex in a way, tactically and difficult, and the America's Cup wasn't meant to be easy, so it's a good race course.
Any prediction?
Well, I think many people would have had a different prediction halfway through the final series last time than what actually turned out in the end. It's tough to make predictions, and each of the teams have very talented people in. What I will say is, my experience is many teams make the mistake of looking at what the winning factors were last time and then addressing those as if they were going to be the winning factors for this next cup. And my experience would suggest that every single cup is different. The winning factors last time almost certainly won't be, there might be a few of them that will be the same, but there'll be new factors that will determine who wins this next America's Cup. And that, in a way, that's exciting, and I can speak for, some of the teams have moved to put new personnel in place. They're hiring new sailors and new designers because of, in response to these changing set of conditions, and in a way that's exciting. But it makes it very difficult to predict who's going to win, because just because you were a strong team last time doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be a strong team in the future.
I just have one more question. Mr. Rush mentioned the age factor, younger sailors coming in as a result of the red order. You mentioned the age factor, not to be discriminatory, but does that mean the older guys are maybe not up to par in handling these new crafts? And what would you say as a former sailor? Like, what's the age range? I have no clue.
Well, I mean, that's biology, isn't it? Unfortunately, I kind of wish I was 25 years old, because I would love this format, frankly. The short course, high speed, high action, fast, decisions, that would be great, But, the fact of the matter is that the average age on Oracle Team USA last time was 32. The average age on Team New Zealand, I believe, was something like 39 or 40. I believe the average age on the boats next time will be into the late 20s, maybe even younger. You look at the team that won the Red Bull Youth America's Cup last time, Peter Burling and Blair Took and those guys, pretty sure that they're going to be the guys on Team New Zealand next time, and I think they're something like 23 years old today, so they're going to be 25, 26 years old, 2017. It's, I think that that's exciting for the sport, because in a way, the America's Cup, it's been a great competition for many, many years, and we've got another announcement that's going to be made on Thursday that perhaps will be exciting news, because it's got a component from the past that I think is going to be very, very exciting. But in a way, it's great that these new young sailors are getting a chance to compete at the top end of the sport. So I think that's moving in the right direction. Yeah.
What's the top speed on these AC-45s?
Well, let me explain what the AC-45 is for a start off. There's the foiling AC-45s, and they're a one design boat that's been and they're all undergoing the transition from non-foiling to foiling now, actually, and it's the whole reason why our first event is in June rather than already having events this year, is that we wanted to make that fleet of one design boats, are all identical, foiling. So our first race in that series is in June in Italy, the second race is in the UK, in Portsmouth, and the third race is in Sweden, and the fourth race is here in Bermuda this year, right? And they're all in the same boats, foiling one designs. But the boat that Oracle Team USA and Artemis Racing are launching this week they look like the AC-72s last time, except they're a smaller version of that. So that is in many ways a test platform to try some of the science projects and some of the other projects involved with tuning these boats, and they're the boats that will be sailing here in Bermuda on a daily basis, basically, or not every day, but because it's actually hard to keep those boats in the water every day. You've got a lot of material. To give you just a couple of facts, which are interesting, I think. Those boats are fitted with technology, and you get something like, I may have this wrong, but the parameters are somewhere close, 30,000 pieces of data off that boat it's either 1/10 of a second or half a second. So you can imagine you're measuring all sorts of things like the loadings on the boats and so forth, and you're getting information that goes back to the design team and the sailing team they analyse those results, and then it gives them important information on where to develop in the future. So that's the sort of program that'll be happening here from, as I said, end of April, early May onwards. And we also have the race program, which is in the standard, everyone identical, AC45s, and that's the circuit that actually goes around the world. But you will physically see the difference between the two different sorts of boats. And frankly, the AC45 that the team will be racing or sailing here, that's a pretty high-tech, piece of equipment. And then, of course, the AC62s, which is the boat that races in the America's Cup. Sorry, this is probably a little confusing for those that haven't seen this before. The AC62s, they'll be launched here in 2016, and they'll go through their initial trials here and so forth, and then raced in Oracle Team USA's case, the America's Cup match, and the winning challenging team will race against that team in the final. So does that explain kind of?
Well, how fast do they go, do you think?
Oh, sorry, I didn't answer your core question. I think the AC45s will go pretty fast. I understand that the standard AC45, which is slower than the let's say the sports version, I believe Luna Rosa, who have been sailing their boat in Sardinia, I believe they've gone about 43 knots in their boat. Now the one that, as I said, the Oracle Team USA and Artemis Racing will be sailing here, they could probably reach speeds into the high 40s. And then the 62s, I think, just with your technology, improvements over compared to the AC72 programs we saw in San Francisco, I think on certain points of sail they'll be faster, even though they're a smaller boat. So just because of the knowledge that's been gained since then.
So I noticed it, but could you explain the different competitions that utilize the different class of boats, the AC45,
Yeah.
62s, 72s?
Yeah, sure.
And the differences, and,
Sure.
and why one is selected here as opposed to an incumbent boat being used to.
Yeah, sure. So the AC45s, actually the front section of the boat and the back section of the boat come off them, and they fit into a 40-foot container. So they all pack up, and that's the boat that's the boat that gets used around the world. So they get shipped, they start off, as I said, they're the boat that start off in Italy this year, go to Portsmouth in the UK, and then go to Gothenburg in Sweden, and then the fourth race is here in Bermuda. And there'll be a series of races in 2016 as well. Two of the races that we already know about that have already been contracted are the event in Chicago in June, and the event in Portsmouth again, where we're going back, and the other events are currently being negotiated or out to bid now for the 2016 series. So that's the standard AC45 one design. All the teams race the same boat. That's the boat that'll come here, that'll be first raced here in Bermuda later this year, in October this year. Okay? Then we have the boats that'll be raced here in Bermuda for the America's Cup race, right? That is what we call an AC62. That's a boat where you've got a rule where all the boats are the same length, the same width, the same weight, the same wing or mast or sail proportions, right? The way I would describe it, the same sort of power source. But you can play with the shapes within that. For example, the foils that lift the boat out of the water, they might be subtly different shapes. They might be different chord lengths, slightly different widths, slightly different shapes in terms of the curvature in the boards. So there's some flexibility, and there's a design aspect to those boats. There is no design aspect to the AC45s. They are what we call one design, all the same, right? So does that clarify your point? Now, and because they're 62 feet long, with the wings that are, you know, I actually don't know the length of the wings, but they're large. They're much more difficult to ship around the world, you know, so it makes it impractical. And frankly, you need the whole preparations over in dockyards. That's really aimed at the AC-62s. You need a lot more space. There's more complexity in terms of the launching facilities and so forth. They're just a bigger, more complex boat. Frankly, they're a lot more powerful. They're pretty hard difficult to sail, and they're the boats for where the final races are conducted. So, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I have a follow-up with regard to the crew. I would imagine that these are professional sailors for the most part.
Absolutely, that, you know, I mean, frankly, the club sailors look at these boats and there's a wow factor with them, but they would probably know that if they went on these boats and tried to sail them themselves, they wouldn't last very long, probably. You know, they're not easy boats to sail. There's frankly an element of danger attached to them. You know,
so what's the average remuneration for a professional sailor? Because it's a series of races, preparing over several months, if not a couple of years, for a major challenge. These professional sailors, they relocate, they travel around the world. Kind of a commitment do they make, and for what price?
Well, you know, it depends. You know, just like anything, there's a ranking as to either perceived value or value. You know, and depending on whether you're going, you know, it's, you know, some of the sailors get, in my terms anyway, get paid a good salary. Others that are just breaking into it and may become top professional sailors start at the lower end of the salary spectrum. And frankly, you see both, you know, and it's...
What's an average for the sailor?
Well, it varies a lot, you know, but I'm not going to answer the question directly because some of our, you know, that's obviously that employment contracts are, you know, confidential, and frankly, you know, I wouldn't be able to disclose that. But what I will say is, in today's terms, some of these sailors are earning pretty significant money in terms of professional sports. Obviously, not even in the same sphere as, you know, as some of the, you know, absolute major professional sports, but you know, they're in a you know, good living and a good lifestyle. And one of the things about sailing is, one of the good things I believe is there's also an industry element connected to this. So most of our sailors that come in are not just sailors. They might be skilled computer programmers, they might be skilled boat builders or sail makers, or you know, able to, or design engineers or whatever. And so there's that aspect to it too, which I think is quite a strong you know, facet for the sport, because, you know, a lot of the sailors actually can go on and do other things once their sailing career is at the end professionally, you know, which is a good thing, I think.
Just on just a slightly different note, just two last questions.
Yeah.
One with regard to the average cost for the AC-62s. How much are they costing for?
Yeah.
Seniors?
Yeah, they cost about $4 million to produce the actual boat. So they're significant. The AC-45 is around the $1 million mark. You know, so that's another reason why they are used on the circuit.
Now, my final question, a little bit controversial, because, you know, media's always got to ask the controversial question.
Go ahead.
And you might not be able to answer it specifically,
Yeah.
but the commitment to minorities such as African Americans, for instance, from a sailing perspective, we do have various clubs in Bermuda, but there was recently a settlement out of court in New York with a predominantly black sailing club in New York looking to get involved. And maybe prohibitive impediments that exist that need to be removed to make it an easier process for folks that are interested from the minority perspective to challenge?
No, that, Wolf, I can answer that from my perspective, and obviously there were legal proceedings, so I can't, there's some things that I can't say, but it's a totally open process. If you have the capability to challenge for the America's Cup, and that includes, you've got to obviously be able to raise the funding and put an organisation in place that was capable of that, then bring it on. There's absolutely no restrictions that prohibit that, other than complying with the rules, which was in many ways what that particular argument was about.
Just if I may ask a question, Sir Russell, from a Bermuda perspective, there's a debate going on about, the America's Cup is an exclusive sport. It's got a refined, high-end market. Therefore, what's in it? How will the Bermuda community benefit from the America's Cup being in Bermuda?
Well, there's an element where the sport is at the highest level. Like you look at I'll use another analogy, Formula One motor racing. Not everyone could get in a Formula One car and drive it, and perhaps neither should they be able to. It's an aspirational type thing. I think I can drive a car reasonably well, but I wouldn't dream of trying to jump in a Formula One car and drive it around the track, or if I did, I'd be dreaming, literally, And that's kind of the same with the AC62s. And as I said, that's not a boat that's available for everyone, frankly. It's the top end of the sport, the professional athletes that get on these boats and race them, right? But there's a whole nother opportunity, I think, with America's Cup. And I've seen this happen, I saw it happen in New Zealand, frankly, where the America's Cup was a stimulus for a lot of the youth programs that still exist today. And it's one of the reasons why I think, I was just talking about it before with some of the gentlemen at the back of this room, it's one of the reasons I think that some of those youth programs remain strong today. So we have an opportunity, and we certainly have a desire to create programs here in Bermuda that give, in particular, kids the opportunity to be exposed to the marine side of sports, and I'm not necessarily saying high-level sailing. That's a small part of it. I'm just talking about having the opportunity to go out there and chase their passions and see how their passions developed, And some of those programs have been, I understand, tried before here, but I think there's a real opportunity where the America's Cup could be a real stimulus for that, and you could put the organisational structure in place that a lot of these programs rely on to create some longevity. You could put that in place and use this as a catalyst to do that and do that. In America's Cup, we certainly have it's one of my goals to do that. So we have quite big ambitions there to develop a program throughout the community, exposing young kids to some of the water programs. And we hope to get that started, let's say by the middle of this year, at least in some parts, and expand that over the next 2.5 years.